Hey everybody, it's Dark Guardsman back with another video. Now you may be going like, why are we looking at the curse reward page and everything else and seeing the points when I don't normally show these off and always. What I'm doing is I want to show off a cool little system I made. I didn't really do much of the work on this, to be honest, so I'm using a third-party plugin for this, but it was the customization data that is kind of what I do want to show off, and the potential power that this system does have for understanding what's going on when it comes to the curse transaction system and actually figuring out what downloads we're getting for one mods and everything else. Before I actually show this off, let's actually close this off so it doesn't highlight. So what I'm wanting to do here is I want to get this information. So this information we're looking at here is basically how many points I'm getting rewarded per mod. Basically it's equivalent to the downloads, more or less. It's not an exact one-to-one to downloads because how it works is there's so many points to give out per day, and they give out points to each mod and mod developer based on the percentage they are distributed, number of downloads, number of ad visits, everything else. So you get points for the mod project, and it relates to like basically this. We can go look at these and you can see, like, for example, Wooden Shears is a mod that I actually get 2.4 million downloads is what we have on it so far, but if you actually look at the actual files themselves, the files themselves actually don't get as much downloads as they look like. They get basically 300,000. So this is the version that's getting most downloads from 112, and this is the version that's actually getting most of the downloads for 110. 110 is the driving force, the reason why because it got included in Sky Factory 3. But if we go back to the page right here, so we've got all these points, and the problem is that you can only really look at one of these at a time, and you can't really do much with it. So you can see the points and go, yeah, okay, I'm getting most of my points from this, I'm getting most of my points from that, and so on and so on. So I can get some really basic information. I can look at how many points I'm getting per day. I can do some really simple math in order to actually figure out how much money I'm making. I actually do this math quite often. So if we go back to another thing, this is kind of what inspired me to work on this, is that I was tracking financial information. So for those who don't know, I do work as a self-employed individual that is trying to generate a passive income. That's basically what this is a passive income. You make money simply by stuff existing, and you don't really have to put work into it. But I do actually track this for tax purposes, and I actually do have data sitting here looking at all the amount of points I've made over basically this year, so that way I can get stuff, and it will figure out how much money we've made from Curse, and I can then use this to figure out how much time and energy I need to be sticking into the mods in relation to the amount of money I'm making, so that way I'm not spending extra time doing things that isn't generating money to help pay down my student loans, student loans. I don't know why I said the word let. But yeah, pay student loans, pay rent, pay power, pay insurance, all this stuff stacks up, and of course we're making 60 bucks, which by the way is not covering even basic expenses of the organization, because we do pay for things like GitHub, we pay for software, server domain names, protection on those domains, and everything else. But that's another story for a different video. So we get all this data, and I can look at this data and I can go, okay, how much points I make. I can then track, okay, what's the change in points. I can then track how many points did I make per month, what was the average points, how much did I average per day, how much did I make total. I can then build this little trend graph to go look at what the data looks like, and it's a bit of a mess, it's all kind of over the place. I can then look at spots and try to make predictions figure out, okay, what days are we making a lot more downloads, what days should I be releasing mods on. We figured out, okay, Friday's the best day to do any release, because everybody's usually off school Friday evenings and doesn't go to school Saturday and Sunday, so you get a lot of downloads on that. So we can go look at all that trend data, although that trend is not actually kept consistent, because I think Curse actually changed how the points are distributed, so that way you can't actually change more than one point at a time, and etc, etc. But you get all this information. This is cool, but I have to manually input this. So what I have to do is go and find the day. I then have to go over here, and then I have to grab the information. I've already inputted all this. You can see 35.87, 35.7 last entry. So I've already gone through and entered this, but this is kind of tedious. This means I have to come through here every single day, and I gotta do this. And this means that there's no physical possibility of a way that I'm going to go and grab all this information and insert that manually every single day. So to solve this, there's a technique called data mining, and another technique called data scraping. And you put these two together, and you actually can take and pull information out of a page and pull that information out in an automatic way that you don't have to really work to get, and you can just click a button and you're done. So that's kind of what I'm working on. This is kind of what I wanted to show off for this video. And what I did is I went and I found a free tool online. There's hundreds of these free tools. I don't know enough about this one to really recommend it or not recommend it. I can say that it's not easy to do, because what you have to effectively do, you go through edit, you have to figure out, okay, how you're going to select your rows. So we basically had to go figure out what the div tag is. And how you do this, by the way, is you can use the really cool Findy tool, which works sometimes, or you can go and click inspect using Google Chrome, and you can go dig through the web data. And I had to sit here and just dig through this, and I had to find where everything is in here. So you got containers, divs, sections, more divs, and what you're literally looking for you don't want the transaction header, you want this container, which this container contains the transactions, which is what we're looking for. We're looking for any object that starts with a div and has the class ID of transaction. And that will actually find that, and you can see right there in our transaction. So that'll go in that, and that'll say, okay, each of my rows is that. So any data I pull comes from that section. Then you got to figure out your columns. This is the reason why I'm probably not going to have a lot of the mods in the list. If the mods aren't over a certain point value, I'm not going to stick them down here because I have to enter each one manually. And then I have to go in each one of these. I have to go, okay, I'm looking for a list that contains the name of this, and I have to then find that, and then I can see, okay, that'll extract data, and you can see like the data off that 15.2, and I can get all that information. And it'll find all that for me, and I can do that pattern. Downside of this, by the way, though, for those who probably figured out the obvious way, if Curse ever changes this page, I have to go redo this entire thing again. Luckily, I've actually figured out how this works. It's not exactly the hardest thing ever. For example, like I can get the title out of this. We've got extractors to get date. For some reason, how Curse actually stores the date on this is they give you a title, and then then if you hover over, will give you the date. So hover over text is actually what is extracted with this one, which by the way doesn't always work for this one. So sometimes I've parsed this page and I won't get a date on the first one, and you'll occasionally just scroll down and you just won't get dates on some of these. Then of course you get an epoch date, which I have no clue what actually is, or information wise I have to go do some more research here later. But you get all that, and then of course you get some other things like you can navigate, so you can scrape multiple pages. Luckily everything's on a single page. You have to set up an action, which you have to basically say, okay, how do we scroll down, and which I have to set up down here, which I actually have to edit this because I went to go run this, and I was recording a previous video, and I basically ran out of memory because 100 max actually is more than you actually need before it clicks the button. And I'm going to say, I think it only took like 20 clicks, and how this works, if I click text click, it'll go and it'll click that page button down there for me, and it'll keep scrolling down, it'll do that for me, and then I can add that into here, and it will work. Yeah, I don't think this works. So the weird sad thing about this is, so pre-create click element, before data is click on elements, etc. So there's things you can do here, and I actually probably should make this click these elements up here so that way I only get point award, and it doesn't try to collect any of the transfer points, although it won't actually do that. But we get this, you can do some JavaScript here so you can clean up your data, but we're going to go ahead and hit save on this, and we're going to run this script real quick, and hopefully that 20 is not too much. But we'll click run, and how this works, it'll pop up a window, and it'll start scraping, and what we can do is we can look at this page over here, and you'll start to see it click this button down here over and over again, and it will keep moving down the page, and it will keep pulling information out, pull information out, move down the page, pull information out, move down the page, pull information out, and so on and so on, and it'll keep going down the list. And eventually, it's supposed to finish. So it does about 20 clicks, 3 clicks a second. So it's going to take about a minute for this to run, so we can keep going and talking. But what I plan to use this information for is, I don't think I did note it, I'm pretty sure I did, is that I'm going to collect this, and I'm going to figure out kind of what the trend data is, like how many downloads are we going up and down, what days are the downloads good, what days are the downloads bad, what mods are getting really good downloads, what mods are getting bad downloads, what mods should we be spending time on because they're getting good downloads. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, you're just thinking about the money, because for those who don't get the understanding is that downloads converts to points, points converts to cash. It's one of those unfortunate things we do have to consider the money, because a lot of us actually are adults and we're not kids, so we can't just sit around and kind of get stuff paid for us, like pay for our food and everything else. We have to do that ourselves, so we have to buy our own food, pay for our own insurance, everything else, which means I need to be figuring out what mods are getting good downloads and what mods are a really good idea to focus on. Of course, I'm still going to focus on mods that are probably not going to get good downloads, simply because I like to make things and I don't really care what I make. But theoretically, if we see a mod that we put a huge amount of effort into and it's not getting any downloads, then we might put it on the back burner and go focus on another mod for a while, just so we get the download points back up. Then we can go back to the other mod and work on it. Anyways, this is continuing, and this should eventually keep working. It's actually finished now. So I'm not actually sure how long this thing takes to run. I did a couple test runs, and I know that when it does, you do 30 entries, it doesn't take too long to process, but we clearly have more than 30 entries here. We can actually check this by going and opening the inspector if it's still open. I forget to open it again. I can't even click the page. Oh, here's the inspector. So we can go to the inspector real quick, and we can go... So there's no number on the number of tags here, but you can clearly see there's a lot of them right there. Failed to respond. Status of 400 bad requests. I think it's one of the ads breaking. The pages themselves don't take like any time to load, so that's good. We can check performance of the page. Actually, we have to apparently turn that on. Network data is not exactly... that's fine. Sources, security, application, audit. Okay, so I can close all that. Did it finally finish running? I was hoping this would actually run in the amount of time I was going to record this video, because I was hoping this video wouldn't be that long. What I'll do is I'll cut it here, and I'll come back as soon as it's done, and we can talk about the result. You can't tell by the change of song, we are now back, and it has taken quite a bit of time to finish off. It eventually did. I'm just going to assume it just has a slow processing time of how long it takes to go through here. But it has actually collected all the data. We now have 430 entries. We go all the way from basically yesterday's, when that last date entry was entered, to all the way till February 11th. We almost got basically the next year's data. I believe if I keep letting this run, I can go all the way back to the beginning of time when it comes to my account being created. But we can sit here and we can look at all the data inside the thing. We can also actually hit download. We can export into CSV, XLS, or we can just put it to clipboard. What I've already done is actually put it into the data sheet here. So I now have a data sheet of this, and what I can simply do is keep re-importing this. Every time I change it, re-import this. And what I can do is then make another spreadsheet in here, and I can actually make a graph. So we can do insert, chart, and then I can actually select the data for this. I can go, okay, I want to select the x-axis, and I go all the way back to sheet 1, and I can say, okay, I want everything on that sheet. And we can say we want to go from D1 because we don't want the actual top bar here. And hit OK. And then go back to the sheet here. And that should have theoretically worked. I think Chrome might actually stall here for a second while it tries to get all the data. In theory, what I would actually probably should be doing with this is using Excel. Excel is a lot faster. We'll give Chrome another couple seconds. If Chrome doesn't work, I'll go ahead and flip over to Excel. And yeah, I do actually have Excel, so actually we'll go ahead and just do that, because I think this is just going to crash on me in a second. What I can do is I can create a blank worksheet, and I should be able to do the same thing I did with this and import. If I can remember how to do this. There's a lot of cool stuff we can do, like we do pivot tables in here. I'm not going to show how to do all that stuff because that stuff I only recently learned. Okay, so let's see if I can find the insert button in here. Data maybe? Ah, from text and CV. There we go. And then we just got to go to my desktop. And we should see in here if we actually, well, let's look at it's going to, so data miner, and that should load. I'm going to assume this is crashed, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. And that should load all the data based on the first 200 rows, based on the entire data set. And then we want to, yeah, go ahead and load. You can do the same thing in here. You could do with Chrome too as well. You could basically set this up. Oh cool, it even actually formats it for me automatically, so it's a little cleaner. And it looks like it also even gives me the ability to sort. Nice. I actually kind of like Excel. Excel, if you're like going to do any type of business type processing like this, Excel's better to go towards. Spreadsheets are really good if you just want to do something fast. So we got a sheet here, and what we can do is the same thing we did there, is we can go ahead and create a chart. And we just want a very simple line chart. Yeah, that'll work. And if I can remember how to do this, select data. So I don't want legend. I actually no, I do want legend. Chart range. So let's see what we get for the wooden buckets. That was data miner, wooden buckets. Okay, cool. And there we go. We can see what my downloads looks like over the entire sequence here. I get a nice chart here, and I can see exactly what's going on with all my downloads. I can see how they've been going up. I can see how they've been going down. I can figure out exactly what's going on. I can repeat this for every mod we have. And the cool thing about this, what I can also do is run data analysis algorithms on this to figure out what the trend lines actually look like, and then I can start correlating that to events going on, like was the weekend this day, which very likely these spikes are the weekend. It's hard to tell because I don't have days down here, I just have the number entries. But we can go, okay, if that's a weekend, that's a weekend, that's a weekend, and so on. Or I could say, okay, there's certain breaks or events that go on, like say, for example, our downloads spiked roughly around when, for example, Sky Factor 3 came out, or we got to include this mod pack. I can then go, oh yeah, that mod pack is exactly the reason why we went up. Or I can go, okay, maybe this post we put on Reddit, which we're using for social media to kind of broadcast and advertise the mod, we like made that post and oh cool, the downloads went up just right after that. So you can do some analysis to correlate that information, correlate it to like weather, correlate it to a whole bunch of stuff, and then build up some understanding of how to predict and how to improve download ratios and everything else. So anyways, that's been about all. I know this has probably been a very boring subject. Most of you probably didn't even make it this far, and the ones that did, I thank you for kind of doing all that and sticking around.